Good afternoon, and welcome to Smithsonian Gardens, Let's Talk Gardens, a weekly webinar series that focuses on gardening and related topics. You're in for a treat today. We have an exciting presenter with really great information to share with you. But first, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. We will not interrupt our speaker to ask her questions. We'd like you to put the questions in the chat box, which is an option that you have at the bottom of your screen. So if you'd open your chat box, and when you put your question, please have it so all attendees can participate, can see your question. So that's a function you have on your screen. Also, for best optimal viewing, please turn off all your other browsers except for this browser that you're watching, Let's Talk Gardens, and that will give you the best view of the slides that we're going to show you. You can also control the way that you see us by choosing gallery view or speaker view. Speaker view, probably the best because you'll be able to see our speaker the whole time that she's delivering the presentation. So, and at the end of this presentation, we are recording it, as you had to agree. We will place this presentation as well as Janet's plant list and resources that she has to share on our website, which is gardens.si.edu, as is recommended in our chat box. So without further ado, Janet Draper, will you please tell us about Let's Talk Gardens? I'll come back on at the end and help go through the questions with you so that you know what our audience is dying to know. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Janet Draper, and I've been playing in the dirt at Smithsonian Gardens for the last, well, let's just say 2 decades. It's been a while. And I just wanted to share a little bit, a few tips today of how I garden. This is not the only way to garden. This is not the only way to design, anything like that. It's just coming from what I do and what I have learned over the years playing in the dirt. So let's get into what is a garden and how do you create a garden. It's so, gosh, it sounds easy, but it's really complex. First of all, plant knowledge. The thing about plants is they are so regional. So you could take the same plant, I garden in Washington, D.C., take that same exact plant and take it to Portland, Oregon, and it acts totally different. And each region has different plants and different things that you can do in your region. I'm no genius. I can't tell you about the plants in your region. So if you were joining in with us today, hoping to get all the plant information possible for your specific garden, sorry. I've spent a lifetime learning plants and I've just scratched the surface. And when I go to another part of the country or the world, I'm like, whoa, what is that? So plant knowledge is a lifelong learning lesson. So if you were hoping I could do it in an hour, sorry, I don't want to waste your time, but it is a lifelong endeavor and you're constantly learning. So garden creation is also the science behind the plants and how they photosynthesize and how they grow and live and the requirements they need. Again, lifelong lessons that you're constantly learning. The artistry, creation of a garden is all about art and you know, like the plants are like pastel colors, and just like an artist with a canvas, you are an artist out in your garden and you can create so many different visions and expressions, and that comes from within. That cannot be taught to you. A garden is all about the textures and the diversity of the plants and how they work together. It's about the scale of the plants, like huge to little tiny, and bringing them all together. And garden making is about color theory and how the colors interact together. And it's about your style. Do you want a flamboyant style? Which, of course, if you haven't figured out by now, I'm rather flamboyant. So, is it a flamboyant style? Is it a subdued style? There's so many choices and options. And then, of course, you're not out there working in the garden alone. You've got your friendly critters just waiting to munch on whatever creation you have done. And again, critters are regional. I've had, in my experience working in front of the public at Smithsonian Gardens, I've had people ask me, or tell me about their experience having a moose come and eat everything in their garden, or the armadillos, or the this, or the that. Unfortunately, wherever you garden, you will have critters. They live there, and you need to deal with them, hopefully in a humane way, but they will create challenges. So you put all of this together, the plant knowledge, the artistry, the critters, the scale, the texture, all of that together. At times it can be really overwhelming. There's so much that's coming at you, and think about this and think about that. Well, I just want to give you, today a little lifeline, a little helping hand. I won't be able to answer all of your questions or anything like that. I'm just sharing a little bit of my experience. So let's delve in. And, when you think of Smithsonian Gardens, probably the first garden you might think of is the Enid Haupt Garden. It's a very formal garden with this lovely Victorian parterre out front. And the horticulturist in the Haupt Garden think really long and hard about what plants they're going to put in that parterre. Because, like the blue scabiole, and let me stop right here. Anyone that is really interested in the plant names, that list will be shared. Today, I'm not really talking about the specific plants, but the overall feel they share or give to you. But if you're really a plant nerd and you want to know exactly what that is, that material will be available for you. But anyway, back to the Haupt Garden. They have to choose annual plants. An annual is a plant that that lives for one season, and it basically blooms and blooms and blooms until it dies. That's how it's been programmed. And with hybridization, they really look for plants that put on more and more blooms. So for the Enid Haupt Garden, they're choosing plants that they want. When they put them in the ground, they're going to start performing, and they're going to perform until they rip them out in the fall. And they are going to look good and perform that entire time. Or they put things like this alternanthera down here and the green, where they clip it to maintain it in those precise forms that they want it. That is an awesome form of gardening, and it's controlling of the plants and using the plants to do what you want. I garden in the Ripley Garden, which is on the other side of the Arts and Industries building. They basically have to separate me from the Haupt Garden gardeners because our styles are so different. The Haupt Garden, very formal and rigid, and the Ripley Garden, a little bit more loose and wild. It's just a third of an acre garden, and it's, I like to show people the diversity of plants that are out there. And the winding path walks back to Independence Avenue, and it just sort of meanders. So my personality And the bones of the garden don't really call for formality. My style is much looser, more textural. You know, I want the garden every day when I come out to show me something different. Show is somebody else might be in bloom, or something else would have happened, or it's like a symphony that keeps going on and changing as the season progresses. So I use annuals, I use perennials, I use tropicals, I use the entire plant palette and just combine them like an orchestra conductor to create the best music possible. And sometimes, oh, crescendo, everything is fabulous. Fabulous. When the peony is in full, beautiful bloom, you want to stop time. But a garden doesn't stop. A garden is the slowest of the performing arts, but it's still marching on. So one day your peonies might be beautiful, and the next day, wah, wah. But if you design your garden based on that peony flower, your display is going to last for 2 weeks at the most. But if you design based on foliage, like I do, this was taught to me years ago when I had the opportunity to intern for Victoria Medal of Honor holder Beth Chatto. She taught me that you build a garden based on foliage, and the flower is a bonus. It's like the cherry on the top, but you don't. And this is, I'm talking with designing with perennials, not with annuals. With a perennial, they bloom for a much shorter period of time. So you don't build the garden entirely around that 2 week period. You build it based on the plant itself, and then be happy when it does bloom. So what am I talking about? When I'm looking at plants for a new garden bed, I've already decided who wants to grow there. So that's the plant knowledge. I've looked into the sun, the soil, the water, all of that. So I've gathered my potential plants to go in there, in that bed. So I'm looking at their habits and their forms, and what's the foliage color of that plant, and what's the overall texture. And here are some examples. Like this spirea on the left-hand side is, first of all, it's that chartreuse color that pops out and grabs you. And then it's the elegant, soft texture, that fine mounding. It overall has a weeping look to it. And then look at this Iris siberica in the middle. The foliage gives a very vertical element, and it leads the eye up and down. And then you've got this big green mass over here, this big hefty mound of green. That's a peony, by the way, which is out of bloom. So it's still the composition holds together because those three flowers, or those three plants, really, they combine well. They make beautiful music without the flower. Another example, this is prism kale, this big textural blue-gray. Oh, it's awesome. There is no reason why you have to segregate your vegetables into a separate bed. In this picture alone, I've got this lovely kale in front. It's the prism is the variety there. And then this is actually a basil, pesto perpetuo, where you can incorporate that in, and it lends a vertical element and that variegation to the foliage. And then right behind it is a feathery Amsonia. So it's all about the textures here. And yes, there are some colors, there's some flowers. That's a pentas there and acolypha down at the base, but they're just accents. the main focus is the foliage and the texture. Let's see what else we've got here. So the way I start my composition, and I'm a plant geek first. I don't consider myself a designer. It's all about the plants. And when you're creating a garden, it's showing off your plants. It's like getting dressed in the morning, where you start with those sexy boots you want to wear and then build an outfit from there. So I always start with one strong plant and then start building in and bringing the friends that will make that central plant really shine. And the others will shine too. Here, this strong fuchsia, very bold texture, linear lines, strong presence, and then you can accent it. You pick up those little details in the plant with something like the fuzzy chenille in the back of this tibouchina that looks like a chenille blanket, just contrast against the strong fuchsias. And then this euphorbia sticks up on fire in the back, where it brings out that yellow color. See, it's all about playing. So I want you to relax and just start looking at the plants and see how they can play together well and interact and basically raise each other up. We don't want a bride there, one central plant that's your only focus. You want the entire orchestra playing in harmony. I love this. Most things in my garden happen by chance. I might have planted things fairly close together, and then they move to where they want to be. So this interaction of the Brunera, that beautiful heart-shaped foliage, that silvery veination, contrasted with that deep green, solid green Disperopsis. Together, they sing. Again, there's no flower on those two plants. There's a little bit of a flower back here in the back with a semi-aquiligia, or I think the botanists have now moved it into columbine. But yeah, it's all about the texture and playing. Creating a garden should be fun. It shouldn't be a dissertation that you have to really work hard on. So play with textures. I mean, look at these three plants together. They just sing. They contrast with each other. You've got light and dainty and almost lacy with that Corydalus lutea. That's a golden Tricertus coming up there. It's the fresh foliage, so it's still bright and green. And the grassy Hakanakloa just wanting to get in on the party because it looks so much fun. So you're playing off textures. Here again, playing with textures. And I usually will triangulate. I'll start with one plant. So maybe I'll start with the hosta down here, and then I'll add another contrast, another buddy with it, like the Hakanakloa, which is, it accents. And then you add a third, and you form this little triangle, and then you just keep triangulating from there on and adding a few more plants. You don't, or at least I never have a clear scheme of what the garden will look like. I just start putting these 3 plants together, and then 6 plants together, and 9, and building from there. And sometimes a plant does want to be the bride, stand out and just be there. This is Solanum quitoense. It's known as Nirnhio, or bed of thorns. For some reason, I don't know why, But when you plant that in the garden, it demands attention. It is center stage. But you can combine it with equally strong plants and really like bring out the colors of those thorns, those bloody, blood-sucking thorns. And yes, they do collect blood. Uh, you know, that color is repeated over here. This is a cotton, by the way. It's a black cotton. Gossypium herbaceum, it's the black form, and Sanchezia in the middle. Wonderful texture, not a flower to be seen. It's all about texture, and it's still very vibrant. Another way that I start building a garden is repeating of the same plant. Instead of drifts of one, as my friend Tony Avent often describes his garden, you sometimes by repeating the same plant, you'll really add a lot of visual weight and texture. And it's not monotonous. I can look at this panel of river birches at Old Brick Botanic Garden in Madison, Wisconsin forever. It leads you down the path and you want to follow them. Here's another example. You know, the plants, you can repeat the same element. It doesn't have to be a plant. It can be a different style or a different element. So this was a display garden that was up in Ontario where they had repeated the same very simple container and boxwood, just repeated. And it just builds some weight for the garden. And even in the Ripley garden, with a plant nerd as a gardener, where I want to grow one of everything, I have learned fewer diversity, but repeat the same plant a couple of times will really build continuum through the garden. So here is Peony Bartzella in bloom. And the Ripley Garden's only 1/3 of an acre. So space is precious, but I will give space enough to have 2 Bartzellas there. So it leads the eye and it makes the garden seem so much bigger just by repeating the same plant. Notice it's the same color plant. If I had chosen a pink peony back here, that would not repeat that element and draw you through. So it's repeating the exact same plant. And that's the repetition of the color. And here's another example of that theory where this is a mustard. It's an edible mustard. Giant red, or red giant, I think is the cultivar on this one. That burgundy color of the mustard is picked up in the spots of the podophyllum. And then it's also picked up, if you look closely, this, it's an epimedium. That same pink color tone is repeated. I was a little off on my red of the tulips, but hey, you know, there's always next year. But pick a color and repeat it. Or even here in the peonies, if you don't have room for more of the same, I've repeated that same color in the Bartzella peony with our Native American columbine, Aquilegia canadensis. And so it ties everything together. And, you know, play, again, have fun with contrasting colors or complementary. Play with that color wheel. This is I almost called it an impatiens, sorry, a marigold that, yes, it is an annual and yes, it is a flower, but once it starts blooming, it repeats its bloom throughout the season. So I can rely on that for that color. So I'm using that bright, you know, vibrant orange as a contrast with the steely blue-gray of the euphorbia. So they complement each other and make each other stand out even more. And you can do that with perennials. Even though it's a very short bloom time, I've picked up the burgundy color of this eucomis. It's South African bulb down here, eucomis sparkling burgundy. I've picked up that burgundy color and repeated it with the lily above. So it really ties the two together. This is a very short little um, extravaganza in the garden because both the eucomis and the lily only bloom for a short period of time. But you can play with that little time frame if you have the plant knowledge and you know who's going to bloom when, where, and why. You can have these magical moments. One other thing I've learned over my years of doing a public garden is massing. You know, don't be skimpy. In Again, this goes back to instead of having one of everything, repeat the same plant more than once and go big and bold. Like this asparagus fern in the urn. You know, if I had just a little asparagus fern in there, it would look like maybe lonely, maybe, you know, not so generous. But when you use big mass of all the same thing, it just is welcoming and very generous. And then when you have this euphorbia diamond frost literally oozing over a wall, you know, it's so much joy, it can't be contained. It just, it ties everything together. If I had little soldiers, like little plants one by one by one planted in a row, you're not going to get that generous feeling. So plants, you know, I plant like they flow, like a puddle of water will flow together. A puddle doesn't stay in a little line. It sort of spreads out and it oozes. And that gives me more of a relaxed feeling in the garden. And here, instead of just having one little geranium, St. Olga, I have a mass of them. So it really holds things down. And then this blatilla, this is a hardy orchid. Even when that's not in bloom, you've got the strap-like foliage reaching for the sky. And then when it does bloom, you got that pop of fuchsia that's gonna knock your socks off. And then behind it, this golden yellow is sort of like a zinger, you know, all those people that say you don't mix pink and yellow. Well, relax, you can mix pink and yellow, have fun. And here's an example of bringing everything together. So I've got the texture of here, this carex, and the texture leading upwards. And then kind of like this river of erysimum, or erysimum, I'm sorry, erysimum. It's a wallflower. So this is, they were planted during the winter and then blooming in the spring with the tulips. And because there's a mass of the erysimum that sort of like leads back into the Arts and Industries building, it's like a river and it just brings everything together. And then dotted with the blue of the Veronica, that contrast color of the orange and the blue. And then you add a few tulips and it's like you look like a genius just by putting things together really well. And also having some substantial things in the background that holds it together. This is just a simple boxwood, needs a trim. Yucca rostrata there that gives that wonderful fireworks element. And there's a blue-gray, repeating the blue-gray here with this evergreen, and then all back in the back, there's another, that's even in a different bed, but the eye is led to that bed. That's a Thunbergia I'm sorry, Pinus thumbergia. So the black pine. So, and here, you know, the Ripley garden, yes, it's a third of an acre, but even if you've got just room for a few plants, you can still play. This is the work of my friend Dan Benarsik, whom I hold in very high esteem. He has used, I mean, this composition to me is so strong. He's used this big mama agave in the middle. That's the bride, just holding center stage. But he's repeated that same silvery color over here with the plectranthus. And the silvery element here, I'm not even sure what this is, a cerastium or some little silvery plant. And then that pop of color with this Mexican flame vine that just meanders and just flows through it all. It's basically 4 plants put together to create magic. And you can do the same thing in your garden, just being thoughtful about texture and looking at the plant form and texture and treating the flower as a bonus. So, but really, the most important thing is relax, try things out. If it doesn't work the first time, that's why you have a shovel. You just dig it up and move it. But don't be so worried about what others will think. A garden is a self-expression of your creation and your creative powers. So do what makes you happy. And that's what it's all about. And sometimes I get really stymied and worried when I'm thinking about putting a design together. And I have these 2 quotes that hang above my desk. And these are both from my friend Thomas Rayner. And the quotes, you know, first of all, sucking is the first step to being sort of good at something. You know, meaning you gotta try. If you're not trying something new, you'll never get better. So be risky. Come on. Try it. And, you know, maybe you won't like it. Maybe, you know, maybe it won't work out, but you've tried. You've learned a new skill. You've tried a combination that you realize, maybe that's not right. Or it's like the bomb and you have just looked like a genius. And Thomas's second quote, and I love this, is in the garden, anyone can be an artist without apology or explanation. So my front garden at home, my front lawn is a prairie. I've ripped everything out and it's totally planted. I don't have to ask permission to do that. It is my garden, it is my self-expression, and it brings me joy. And that's what it's all about. Creating a garden is bringing joy for you first, and hopefully some others will enjoy it too. So anyway, that's just a little bit of what I can share with you today. Main takeaway is relax, have fun. So I hope to see you in the garden soon. Take care.
Thank you, Janet. Terrific. And I appreciate all the beautiful pictures to get me excited about going out in the garden, even if it is 120 degrees outside.
Oh, it is miserable out there.
Maybe I'll wait till this evening. But we do have some questions. And I thought I would share them with you, see if you can answer. If not, we'll answer them in our resource box at the that will appear on our gardens.si.edu website next week. It just takes us time to put closed captions on the videos. That's what we do. That's why it's not posted immediately. So Do you have recommendations for any gardening books that can really help you out? Now, the person that posed this question is from our area, from the DC area, but I know that there are garden books that will give you general information as well as help you out as a new gardener here in DC or the Mid-Atlantic area. Do you refer to any?
Oh gosh, I refer to books and pictures online all the time just to gain inspiration. Uh, One of my all-time favorites is Thomas Hobbes out in Vancouver, The Jewel Box Garden. Oh my gosh, I can drool over that book, and that just the pictures and just the creative process. So Jewel Box Garden, Thomas Hobbes. Another is a recent book. I'm not sure the exact title. It's on Chanticleer Gardens. And if you haven't been to Chanticleer, I think Chanticleer is one of the best gardens in the US. It's just so creative and amazing. And this book that the gardeners recently did, they talk about their creative process. And that's what garden creation is. It's a creative process. So those are the two that pop to my head immediately.
Okay,
And then,
where is Chanticleer located? You're
oh,
recommending it, but you're hiding
oh,
where it is. And I do
sorry.
know that Adrian Higgins wrote a book on Chanticleer. Is that the one
Yeah.
you're referring to, or?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
There's
Okay,
another book. Chanticleer is in Wayne, Pennsylvania, right
great.
outside of Philadelphia. And right now with COVID, they also are having challenges with how many people that they can allow onto grounds at the time. But go to their website and it's just,
There's some
drool,
lovely pictures.
drool. It is beautiful. So Chanticleer is outside of Philadelphia and it is worth a visit. Well, they're closed during the winter.
Hmm.
So, but during the summer, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So any other books that you would recommend to start a gardener out in this area? So some practical, meaty ones that they can look up and find out information
Oh,
on
oh,
plant growth.
oh, I'm sorry. I was going for inspiration versus,
Inspiration and meaty. I
oh,
like both.
meaty. Oh, um, the Bible, Alan Armitage. Dr. Armitage was a professor at University of Georgia for like 30 years. He's now retired, but Armitage's book on perennials is wonderful. Um, but there's so many plants out there. Do you want annuals? Do you want perennials? Do you want tropicals? One book, there is no one book that is going to cover it all. So
I agree with you.
you
Yeah.
can dig into each one. Michael Durr's book on woody plants is the industry standard and the Bible for all of us on woody plants. There's a local native plants, native trees and shrubs for DC and Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic region by Tony Dove, my former boss. Phenomenal resource if you're looking into native plants. There are so many good resources out there. And
Right.
also the internet. But beware, not all the information on the internet is as accurate as
It can be challenging.
it can be challenging. Thank
It can
you.
be challenging.
Yeah. And
Yes.
also go to your local botanical gardens and resources, your locals. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be able to show you what actually does grow in 90-degree weather with 90% humidity and clay soil.
I agree with that.
Just explore your regional world to get information.
You can also ask master gardeners, and the
Oh,
extension agent
mhm.
and University of Maryland, as well as Virginia Tech, do have master gardeners in our area, and they both have websites that you could go on and ask them information for local gardening, as well as wherever you are in the United
Yeah.
States. There are master gardening groups, and you can ask them questions. So that's good. So I'm looking at some of the how someone noticed that all your plants look so healthy, no chew marks in them. I know there's some chew marks, I've seen them, but do you use pesticides in your garden? And yeah.
Okay. Absolutely not. I do not use pesticides. I want to see chew marks. I'm happy. Well, usually I'm happy when I see chew marks because that means my garden is giving back to insects and birds and supporting life. So giving beauty to me and my visitors, but also supporting life in the garden. I am an organic gardener. I've tried not to spray chemicals in the Ripley garden. Occasionally we will spray for leaf miner on the boxwoods, but that's only if I'm desperate.
And we're not going to recommend pesticides because that's something, that's the master gardeners, that's the extension agent. But I know that you don't spray that much because your garden is a habitat, a home habitat, and you are encouraging visitors. So and you can find out more about that on our website as well, about the habitat and home. So you have some great tips on your website or on your webpage for habitat for the exhibition. So thank you for that.
The critters.
Yes, I agree with that. If you, this is a big, and I don't know how you're going to do this. I really don't. If you are just starting out as a new gardener, can you choose 3 plants that you would recommend? Say you were starting over in your garden. What 3 plants would you recommend doing it with in our area?
Sun or shade?
Maybe two different combinations, sun and shade.
Yeah, you've got to, and this is where the plant knowledge it's a regional plant knowledge, and even down to your specific garden. The difference of what I can grow in the Ripley garden versus the Enid Haupt garden, which is on the other side of a building. I mean, we're in the same city. Michael can grow different things over there because of the microclimates that he has being a rooftop garden. So 3 plants for
3 for sun and 3 for shade.
Oh man, that's like asking Mama to choose her favorite kids.
Yeah.
But I will. Okay, I will. Mama does like her choices. Okay, Amsonia hubrechtii, Native American Amsonia for full sun. It can go in partial shade, but really full sun. It looks like a giant feather boa throughout the season. It needs some time to get established because it's wee to begin with, because it's putting down roots, really, really deep roots. This is a plant that you do not move it once it's established. So don't pull your shovel out on this one. So plant it where you want it and expect it to be about 4 feet wide by 4 feet tall when it's mature. But it's this luxurious feathery mass that just moves in the wind, green during the summer, golden yellow during the fall, and then it drops to the ground and you can plant lots of bulbs underneath it.
And a beautiful little blue star for a flower. Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's a 3-season perennial. I agree with you.
Flower lasts for a week. But the foliage. Underneath Amsonia, I'm gonna plant, I'm gonna plant some I'm going to throw some veggies in there. I'm going to put redboard kale. I mean, well, yeah, I could do redboard kale with it for the winter season, and then the summer season, more of a prism kale, because that'll last more for the winter or during the summer, and a ground cover kind of thing to go with it. Can you tell I'm going through my Rolodex of plants?
Yeah, do this. Yeah, I can almost see them.
Yeah, I absolutely can. I want something big and chunky down there. Just a yucca, yucca gold sword. It's great 4-season plant, good structure, texture, form. It's got some oomph to it, and white flowers that will draw in some beautiful moths in the evening.
This is National Moth Week, by the way.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yes,
perfect.
it is. So that's perfect. That's really perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that's sun. How about shade?
Shade. Okay. I love podophyllum, which is a Japanese plant. We do have our Native American podophyllums, but Podophyllum peltatum dies back early in the spring. It's a spring ephemeral, but some of the Japanese ones stick around through the season. Podophyllum pleanthum is gorgeous. Big, beefy, glossy green foliage. It'll be harder to find. Use your fingers on the internet to find it. Podophyllum, I mix in some epimediums that have heart-shaped foliage, little low ground cover, beautiful flowers in the spring. Daryl Propst up in New Hampshire has been doing amazing hybridization with epimediums. And then carex. I'd throw a carex in there. I love the carex family. You get all kinds of textures and forms. Like Carex everillo has gorgeous chartreuse foliage 12 months of the year.
Yeah. Oh, I can see them both combinations. They're beautiful. Thank you. Behind me, there's a bunch of tulips. I know you use tulips quite a bit in your garden, as well as daffodils too. So what do you do with the foliage? Somebody wants to know, do you cut them back? And I know you have a great tip for how you don't cut back the foliage. But what do you do with it?
Foliage is essential. The foliage, if you think about it, the bulb is a storage container for energy. And the foliage are the solar collectors. They're the arms that are out there reaching to grab the sun, to convert into energy to store for next season. So if you cut off that foliage while it's still green, you're basically starving your plant. And as a good gardener, you're not going to starve your plant. And you're not going to do bondage, twisting up the foliage or anything like that, because it's reducing the surface area. So it's basic physics and geometry from high school, where the more surface area, the more energy is going to be produced. So you basically look the other way and do a little razzmatazz and have other things happening. So your focus isn't on the foliage of the plants, which will naturally turn yellow as they're dying back. As soon as that plant, the foliage is yellowing or things like that, looking gnarly, it is no longer taking up energy to put back into the bulb. So look away. And also remember to fertilize your bulbs. As the plant is in active growth, the foliage is still on it. It is taking up energy for next year. So if you fertilize right, either while it's in bloom or right after it's in bloom, that energy will be taken up and stored for next year. So no bondage in the garden, kids. No bondage.
I agree. I always wondered how they got them tied in those fancy shapes anyway.
Way too much work.
Way too much work. But here's another tough one, because living in an urban area, we all have tree boxes. What do you suggest planting in those small little spaces that can give you a little bit of beauty other than the tree trunk? A linden was mentioned, but as long as you don't have a walnut, you're in pretty good shape. But so what would you, for those tiny little boxes, just to give you something of beauty?
Yeah, they are really hard, because the root competition is usually very, very dry, and also they get urinated on quite a bit. That's where all the dogs will go. It is challenging. You need some really tough plants. If you get enough sun under there, lantanas, you're looking for things that are drought tolerant, basically. So lantanas would be great if it gets enough sun. And these are all annuals. I'm not even going to try perennials in these beds. Lantana will give you bright color, and they have little hairs that will itch when you get a little too close to them. So that might dissuade a few dogs. You know, using a little combative gardening here. Another one which is a little friendlier is Euphorbia diamond frost.
Oh, yeah.
I love euphorbias are members of the cacti family, so they are very drought tolerant, which is something you really need there.
What about Autumn Bride?
Yeah, Heuchera Autumn Bride would be fine if you've got enough soil mass to get it in there. Heuchera Autumn Bride would be for a shade, more of a shade condition, and it will self-sow and you'll get more out there, and that is a perennial. So that's a good one.
Yeah, and you're right. The euphorbias are perfect. So something like Robbie Eye would be really good, or even some of the sedums I think would work. It wouldn't be as colorful as lantana, but the foliage is beautiful for all of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. So they're asking tough questions, Janet.
That's okay.
They're trying to get rid of liriope. Is there a carex or a ground cover you can recommend for this area?
Yeah. Okay. Cindy just mentioned a Euphorbia rabiae. The full name, Euphorbia amygdaloides rabiae. I mean, God, what a mouthful. But it's known as Rob spurge. It is not a native. If you're looking for a native plant, this isn't your one. But I love Euphorbia rabiae for a shade condition. So if you're replacing liriope, I'm assuming this is a shade condition. But Euphorbia rabiae has beautiful glossy green foliage, forms a lovely mat. In the early spring, it sends up like a 12-inch foliage will top out about 6 inches, I would say. Flower reaches up to a foot. Chartreuse bracts, they're really quite beautiful, and they look good for three months. Months, not weeks, months. But be aware, Euphorbia rabiae spreads by underground runners. And so it's a fantastic plant if that's what you want.
Janet, you either just pulled out your plug. We can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, well, let's try.
Shoot.
Oh.
Well, that one hasn't happened before. So there's always new challenges in technology. So I would say everybody turn up your speaker as loud as you can, and then we'll see if we can hear what Janet says. If not, I will try to translate because I can hear you fairly well, but not real well. Oh, much better. You did it. I don't know what you did. Okay, magic. Thank you.
Nor do I. Yeah. Okay. Euphorbia rabiae is one of those plants that you planted in the right place because it spreads by underground runners and root cuttings and seed. So it's the trifecta to spread, but it's fabulous when you want it there. If you're trying to get rid of it, it's a little bit more of a challenge. Asarum splendens is another beautiful ground cover, but the same caveats with that. Many ground covers will, the reason they're so good at covering the ground is they have numerous ways of reproducing, which they cover the ground quicker.
Right.
So,
perfect for a tree box because it can't jump out, and it's perfect for a tree box.
Yeah, certain plants they need their own secure romper room.
Yep.
So
now the next question is something that we all want: your Rolodex of plants. So how do you organize your Rolodex so you know what plants you want to consider? How do you,
Oh my
do you have
God.
it by color? Do you have it by performance? What
Oh
do
my
you
God.
do?
I have like little sticky notes and everything everywhere I go. I have lists of plants. I have, I'll travel somewhere and see something like a couple of years ago, the Perennial Plant Association, a professional group I'm a member of, we traveled to Denver, and there was this thing called a moon carrot. Oh, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it. It's just little notes and and then you have to find it first of all, and then you'll kill it like 3 times before you find the right place for it. So I have no system. I wish I had a system because the brain is getting well.
Build.
Yeah, I use the excuse I've been out in the sun too long, and I've sort of fried off some brain cells that way.
That's not
Um,
true. I think it's just getting full.
yeah,
So I think that's what it really is. But
yeah, I have no system. I wish I
okay.
did.
Okay. Oh, so we can't bribe you to win your Rolodex. That's too bad.
Sorry.
But yep. Now this one I know I've seen in your garden, and you have some beautiful samples of these dahlias. So
Oh,
tell us about growing dahlias. So what do you do? How do you pick? How do you store them if you do? Or
uh-huh.
what do you do
Yes.
with them? Yeah. How do you grow them in
Oh,
our area?
dahlias are so cool. And actually, this normally a dahlia for us, we're in USDA zone 7. But DC, it's a bit of a swamp and there's a lot of hot air hanging around. Um, it's a little warmer. And some winters, a dahlia will overwinter for us in the ground, which is crazy. This past winter, we actually didn't have a winter, so all my dahlias came back through.
Wow.
Don't expect it though. Don't expect it. If you want to overwinter a dahlia, they have these fat tubers underground. So in the fall, you need to dig those tubers up and then store them in they can go in a shoebox with shredded paper and things. They don't need any light, but you don't want them to shrivel to the point where they desiccate. Um, but just miss them maybe once during the winter, um, and then pot them up in the spring, and you're good to go again.
Hmm.
I usually don't work that hard. I am so spoiled because I have an entire greenhouse crew we are so spoiled at Smithsonian Gardens. I make my lust list of what I want to grow for next year and hand it to our growers, and they do all the heavy lifting. Um, and also, I often don't want the same plant year after year, so that's kind of why I don't save my dahlias that way.
Okay. Okay. But you just answered another question because we can't give particular resources where we buy
Oh
our
no.
plants because we buy wholesale.
Uh huh.
We don't buy retail. But I would say Google is your best friend when you're
Oh
looking
my
for
God.
something.
Or
Yeah.
the Dahlia Societies.
Dahlia Society.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
different societies are perfect. If you want to find a new plant, I think
yeah,
that's a great place to recommend. But we
yeah.
could go on and on, but I want
Oh,
people
this is
to
so much
know it
fun.
is fun. I know I enjoy this. This is my favorite part of the day. My favorite part of the week. Much rather do this than answer emails. But we will post your favorite combinations. I know your plant list went down by slides, so people
Uh-huh.
will be able to see the combinations that you put together. We'll repeat the sun and shade choices that you made on your resource page. And we will also indicate which plants are native and which plants are not native. Well, actually, we'll just indicate which plants are native. But it has been a joy. If you have one last parting word for us, I know you said it in your slideshow, but what would you recommend people to do to stretch their wings as a gardener?
Play, play. It's a word that we don't use enough. I mean, people are intimidated by a garden and they shouldn't be. Go out and play, make some noise, have some fun.
That
Oh,
is perfect parting words. Thank you so much, Janet. We've
You're
really
welcome.
had fun listening to you. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but I was reading. So you can see me look out of the corner of my eye so I can read the chat box. But thank you. And Janet's right. Go out and play. Enjoy your garden. It's not what you have to do for a living, at least for us we do, but for many people, it's your playground. It's your area to have fun. So please listen to Janet. Thanks so much, Janet. We'll see you all in the garden soon. Bye.
Ciao.